Chapter 10. Valka, Broken Trust. The Kyber Claw entered Onusa's atmosphere and dove directly beneath the cloud cover. Though they were at the very edges of Bogan territory, closer to Ashla space than they had been in days, the recent attacks on other monastery sanctuaries, and their run-in with a Bogan lord, meant Valka and Echo Team weren't taking any chances. The Claw settled down among the jungle foliage, landing like a predator finding its roost. The terrain around them was a study in contrasts, beautiful yet forbidding, with dense canopies that filtered the sunlight into cathedral beams. The landing ramp descended with a mechanical hiss. "I've activated the ship's motion sensors," Valka said to Razor as they prepared to disembark. "But I won't be offended if you set up a perimeter." "Already happening, Jedi." "Seriously?" Valka's eyebrow arched at the old title. Razor gave a chuckling shrug, the kind born of years of friendship. He knew well enough that those who had abandoned the Old Republic, the Jedi High Council, and the legions of Leto, had renounced that title decades ago. Having embraced the full spectrum of emotions, they now called themselves Ashla, while those who went beyond that and surrendered to the corrupting power of the dark side became Bogan. The names echoed back to the ancient Force Wars, but Razor had his reasons for using the old word. Nothing brought a man back to fighting readiness like a well-placed reminder of what he used to be, especially when that man seemed distracted by their mysterious passenger. There wasn't much that escaped Razor's notice, particularly when it came to keeping his team and anyone on the mission focused and alive. The console in the Kyber Claw lit up with an encrypted message marked highest priority. "Looks like it's for your eyes only," Razor said. "I'll leave you to it," he added as he exited the cockpit. Valka entered his passcode and read the message. "Mission compromised. HVT allegiance uncertain until verified by Juno. Watch your 6." Valka studied the transmission, then ran the entire mission back through his mind's eye, using the Force to guide his memory so as not to miss anything he might otherwise overlook. As he did, gaps appeared, holes in the narrative like missing pieces of a puzzle, begging for answers to nagging questions that had been gnawing at him since Claven Moor. Valka exited the cockpit and headed to the main hold. Carleen was standing in the cargo hold, stretching her legs after sitting for several hours. Valka watched her graceful movements before speaking. "Cramped ride? You're probably accustomed to traveling in expensive Ori-built yachts." "Something like that," Carleen answered with a knowing smirk. "So am I allowed outside? I noticed your team is setting up a perimeter." "It's precautionary. For your safety. Apparently you're very valuable." Valka's smile was meant to dismiss any notion of suspicion. "If you'll excuse me." Valka walked down the ramp toward Razor. "Help me work through something," Valka said. "Shoot." "You said 5 wasn't in position on your approach to Claven Moor." "Correct," Razor answered with growing hesitation. "I'll talk to him about that. Don't worry." "How many times have you known 5, or any of your operators, to be out of position?" Razor didn't speak. He knew the answer, but wasn't keen on where this conversation might be heading. "When you encountered Dral," Valka paused, allowing Razor time to bring the scene back to memory. "Did anything strike you as unusual?" Again, Razor's silence provided the answer. The weight of unspoken implications settled between them like a lead blanket. Valka felt his stomach tighten as pieces of a darker puzzle began falling into place, while Razor's jaw clenched with the dawning realization of what his friend was suggesting. Why didn't Dral kill Hammer? Valka used 5's real name, Korzek Hamaza, though everyone called him Hammer, a play on his surname and his function on the team. "Dral didn't try to kill any of us," Razor defended. "Not for lack of trying," Valka countered. "Your team said you all took cover." Razor nodded grimly. "Only the IO was killed." "Why?" Razor wanted to say it was because the intelligence officer was a cake-eating, nerf-herding desk jockey with no combat experience. Part of him bristled at the implication. These were his men, operators he'd handpicked, warriors he'd bled with, and who had bled for him. The loyalty in Echo Team ran deeper than blood. But even as his instincts roared in defense of his brothers, a cold knot of doubt twisted in his gut. All he could offer was the truth. He was Draal's target. Then Valka asked the question he had been burning to ask since the conversation began. How did Kath Draal even know the IO was there? The words, the conversation, the mounting evidence, it all crystallized in that moment. Razor turned and looked Valka directly in the eyes. There was something that needed to be done, and his expression told Valka he was ready for whatever came next. Razor activated his comm unit. All elements, on me. Now. Echo Team rallied around Razor in under a minute. Shouldn't someone stay on watch? 5 offered. Valka spoke up. I'll find high ground. Keep an eye out. Razor gave Valka a nod, as much an approval of his suggestion as one of appreciation. This was a situation to be handled by brothers. After Valka had left the group, Razor stood silent for what felt like an eternity, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging in the humid air like smoke from a funeral pyre. What's up, boss? 4 asked. Razor answered the question with a question of his own. Hammer, why were you out of position? Echo Team turned as one toward 5, and in that moment, each man's face became a map of doubt, some showing mere confusion, others the first stirrings of where this question could be leading. 5 started, his voice catching slightly. I thought I heard something, so I went to check it out. But you didn't communicate that to the team, did you? Razor said. That's not how we work, brother, and you know it. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged tension between the operators forming like static before a storm. Eyes that had shared 1,000 dangers now searched each other's faces for signs of the unthinkable. Korzek, Razor said, just slightly above a whisper, using 5's real name. This was no longer about rank or call signs. This was personal, man to man. Tell me the truth. How did Kath Draal know we were there? Korzek lowered his head and closed his eyes. The gesture was small, but it hit the team like a physical blow. All of his brothers-in-arms reacted visibly to the silent admission of something unthinkable. Shoulders tensing, jaws and fists clenching, the bonds of absolute trust beginning to fray before their eyes. 5 took a moment and a deep breath before he spoke. I contacted Draal, he finally let out. What? 3 said. Wait, no, that's not true. 3 waited for a response, a denial, anything. But none came. The silence was answer enough. I had to, 5 said faintly, looking up and finally acknowledging his betrayal, summoning enough courage to look into the eyes of his leader and brothers. He met each gaze as he continued, his voice growing stronger with desperate conviction. The Bogan have my family, my parents and 2 younger sisters. The revelation shattered what remained of the team's composure. The jungle around them seemed to press closer, as if the very air had turned poisonous. Faces that had weathered countless battles now showed naked shock, rage, and something worse, understanding. Each man was forced to confront the terrible dilemma of loyalty, the weight of brotherhood against the bonds of blood. I didn't know what to do, Korzek said, his voice breaking with desperation and regret that seemed to pour from his very soul. 3's voice cracked as he spoke. You should have come to us. You should have told us. We could have helped. His hand shook, not from fear, but from the agony of a trust destroyed, and the pain he still felt for his brother-in-arms. 6's reaction was more primal. His blaster cleared its holster, the barrel leveling at 5's chest. You put us all at risk, he snarled. The IO is dead because of you. The team, caught off guard by their newest member, a man who didn't know Korzek Hamaza the way they did, who hadn't bled with him or shared the quiet moments between battles, did nothing to protest Six's actions. Out of numbness or simple disbelief, they stood still as monuments to a brotherhood that had just cracked down to its very foundation. After an excruciatingly long silence, Razor spoke in a low, measured tone, placing his hand on Six's blaster and gently lowering it. "Where are they now?" "Your family." Korzek's answer didn't come immediately, whether out of embarrassment or fear that admitting he didn't know would make his betrayal seem even more pointless. Blood spilled for nothing more than empty promises. "I'm to wait for a message," Five said, his voice barely audible. "Once the IO was—" He stopped, the full gravity of his actions crashing down on him like a collapsing building. The intelligence officer's death wasn't just collateral damage. It was the price of his family's lives, paid in the blood of an innocent man. "I'm to receive a message of their location." "Hand me your blaster," Razor said quietly. "You will tell us when you receive the message with your family's location." Five nodded slowly in agreement. Razor looked long and hard at Five before continuing. "We will do everything we can to retrieve your family, but I am not sending anyone into a trap. If I feel even one bit like this is a setup." Echo One didn't need to finish his sentence. All knew that Razor was not one to take his team's lives lightly, even in an instance like this where innocent lives were at stake. The team methodically relieved Five of his munitions and armor, each movement precise and professional despite the emotional devastation rippling through the group. They had stripped equipment from enemy combatants before, but never one of their own. As they finished, Five produced the small device he had been using to receive the Bogan Lord's messages. "Keep it," Razor said quietly. "Notify me immediately when you have a location, but don't ever keep secrets from me again." As they finished, Valka returned to the group. He took in the scene with a single glance. Five disarmed and sitting apart, the team's faces etched with betrayal and pain. Valka's expression turned cold as winter stone, his jaw set with the kind of anger and sorrow that burned slow and deep. The following hours were a blur of confusion, thoughts of betrayal, and concern for a team member whose family's lives hung in the balance. As night fell, Razor and Two returned from the monk sanctuary. The jungle air carried a chill that hadn't been there during the day, and the team gathered closer to hear the report. Razor spoke first to update the group. "We let the elders know we would meet with them tomorrow when Kethan arrives. There have been no threats, no evidence of a Bogan attack so far." "Why aren't we taking a defensive position with the monks?" Six asked, his tactical mind already working through the possibilities. Valka answered, his voice carrying the weight of political frustration. "On Thylos, there was a clear threat, a verified large number of Bogan combatants, and we arrived with the forces of 4 great houses. But since that incident, the Ashla Council has prohibited any of the other houses from taking direct action against the Bogan. They don't want to add fuel to the fire." Razor continued, "As it stands now, we're all just on an unofficial visit to the sanctuary." The group nodded their understanding, though the tension in their faces suggested none of them were entirely comfortable with the political constraints. Soon, a small fire set several meters away from the base of the loading ramp provided light and warmth for Echo Team. Five sat apart from the group, a solitary figure silhouetted against the darkness while the others gathered closer to the fire. "Shouldn't he be locked up?" Six said, nodding toward Five with barely concealed hostility. "He's not going anywhere," Razor explained calmly. "He wants to see his family. He knows he needs our help once he receives the coordinates." "We're helping him." Six's voice carried disbelief. "He's still our brother." Echo 2, Zuriel, offered quietly. Two usually kept his thoughts to himself, which made his words carry more weight when he chose to speak. "But he could have gotten us all killed," Six continued, his frustration boiling over. "Yeah, you said that already," Three interjected with his characteristic humor, though his eyes remained serious. "And by the way, Don't ever point your blaster at an Echo team member again. Jardani, Echo 6, looked at the men before him and began to understand that 5 wasn't just another warrior to them, not just a teammate. He was something more, much more. 4, Bay Eli, who spoke even less than 2, surprised everyone by speaking up. Who's to say we wouldn't have done the same if our families' lives were on the line? Valka and the rest nodded in hesitant agreement, the uncomfortable truth settling over them like the jungle night. After a long pause, 2 chimed in. I know what it's like to lose family. I understand Hammer was in an impossible position. Razor, who had remained quiet during the exchange, finally interjected. We live together. We fight together, as a team. No matter what challenges we face them together. Understand? The group voiced their agreement in their individual ways, all of them staring into the flickering flames. That's where Hammer lost my trust, when he lost his trust in me by not telling me about Cathdrol's threat, Razor continued. There can be no Echo team without trust. Valka had gone on many missions with this team. He had created a bond with them that he didn't share with any of the Ashla's other Tier 1 teams. Yet he wasn't Echo, and this felt like something in which he had no say. I trust you. All of you. His voice carried quiet conviction. Fear, war, death. They'll make the best man do things he never thought he could. Good and bad. He looked each man in the eyes. I hope Echo can navigate its way through this challenge and remain Echo, the team I've always depended on most. Valka spoke from the heart. I may not be part of Echo team, but you are my brothers. Each man sat a minute in contemplative silence, absorbing the compliment they had just been paid by one of Ashla's most valiant warriors. The poignant moment was broken by 3. Oh, group hug. Bring it in, guys. The group broke out in laughter, the tension finally cracking. 3 stood up and tried to gather his teammates for the hug, who each did their best to avoid his exaggerated embrace. Typical, laughed Razor, Echo 1. But I wouldn't have you any other way, Tristan. Okay, I'm out, Valka said, patting 2 and 4 on the shoulders. I'll go check on our guest before I turn in. Don't check on her too long, 3 called out jokingly, followed by the laughter of the rest of the team. Valka could see in the distance that even 5 managed a small smile. Valka walked over to the lone figure sitting on a rations container at the edge of the firelight. Hammer, he said softly. Hang in there, brother. We'll do our best to get your family back safe. You know that, right? I do. Hammer, Echo 5, answered without looking up. And the team. They'll forgive you. Trust you again. Hammer kept staring at the ground, silent, drawing in 2 deep breaths before Valka continued. Just give it time. Echo 5 looked up at Valka, his eyes reflecting unshed tears, just long enough to give a hesitant nod before breaking eye contact and staring at the ground once again. Valka made his way up the ramp to the cargo hold, leaving Hammer to his solitude. So I need checking up on, Colleen said with a hint of sarcasm as he approached. Spying on us? Valka quickly replied. I am a spy, Colleen returned as the witty banter found its cadence. Quite a group, huh? The best, Valka replied. I've been on some pretty harrowing missions with that team. I've had to trust them with my life more times than I care to remember. I respect that, Colleen said after a thoughtful moment of reflection. You have people to depend on. Family, really, Valka offered. Yeah, we spies don't do teams very well. Colleen's eyes widened as she spoke, as if to mimic the fierceness of an untamed wolf. We're lone wolves. I don't envy you, Valka said in a more serious tone, being alone, depending only on yourself. Then, thinking of her assignments in deep cover, he added, not being yourself half the time. Is it hard not being yourself? Valka asked. What do you mean? In deep cover work, you're always pretending to be someone else. Colleen paused, as if trying to understand where this line of questioning was headed. We don't pretend. Pretending is for amateurs. We immerse ourselves in our covers. We become them. Exactly, Valka said with a slight chuckle. That must be terribly difficult. Colleen smiled, but didn't reply immediately. Do you ever lose yourself? I mean, who you really are? Some might, Colleen answered, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had survived trials that would break lesser souls. But Juno is the best instructor I know. There's no other intelligence training program like hers anywhere in the galaxy, Bogan or Ashla. She could see she had Valka's attention now, could read the subtle shift in his posture that spoke of genuine interest rather than polite inquiry. We're trained through a process so thorough it strips away every comfortable lie we tell ourselves, she continued, each word deliberate and weighted with hard-won experience. Layer by layer, until we truly discover who we are at the core. Then accept what we find, no matter how uncomfortable that truth might be. No excuses, no self-deception, no convenient doubts to hide behind. Her hand moved unconsciously to brush back her dark brown hair behind one ear. We uncover who we really are beneath all the masks society teaches us to wear, then build our aliases upon that unshakable foundation. That's why we never lose ourselves in deep cover, because at the root of all our fabricated identities lies the essence of who we truly are. That's profound, Valka said, catching himself staring at Colleen a moment too long. It's demanding work, takes considerable introspection. You ask and learn so much about your true self. She tilted her head with a slight smile. Want to try it? Both laughed in the moment. Then Valka's expression shifted, becoming more serious. No. I don't think I'd ever want to know my true self, he said quietly, more to himself than to Colleen. Colleen studied his face in the dim light. I think at your core, you're a good man, Valka. The silence stretched between them before Valka cleared his throat. We should get some rest. Kethan's ship arrives early in the morning. You're right, Colleen agreed, rising from where she sat. Valka tugged on the closest hammock hanging in the cargo hold. I hope this will suffice. It's not an Ori yacht bed, but... I've been on many missions where military transports were my ride, Colleen reminded Valka. I'll sleep like a baby. Right. Of course, Valka replied. He took one more look around the cargo bay, not knowing exactly why he felt the need to linger. After a moment, he added, the team will be outside all night, keeping watch. I'll be in the cockpit, if you need anything. I think I'll be fine, Colleen said with a playful smile. Good night, Valka. Valka backed slowly towards the ladder to the cockpit. Yeah, okay, good night. As Valka settled into the pilot's chair, the ship's systems humming quietly around him, he found himself staring out at the jungle canopy bathed in moonlight. Outside, Echo Team maintained their watch. Brothers guarding brothers, even after trust had been shattered, though understanding had begun to emerge in the span of a few hours. The encrypted message still glowed on his console. Mission compromised. HVT, allegiance uncertain. He glanced toward the cargo hold where Colleen slept, then toward Hammer, sitting alone in the distance with his guilt and his hope. Two mysteries, two unknowns that could either aid them in their conflict with the Bogan or plunge them into greater conflict. Valka had spent years learning to trust the Force, to let it guide him through the impossible choices that defined a warrior's life. But tonight, surrounded by questions that had no easy answers, he wondered if some decisions were meant to be made in darkness, with nothing but instinct and the bonds between broken people to light the way. In the distance, a night bird called out, a lonely sound that echoed through the trees like a warning. Or perhaps, Valka thought as he closed his eyes, like a promise that dawn would come, regardless of what truths it might reveal.